I said, you may not like everything you're going to hear, but I said,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to tell the truth.
Hey, everybody, I've got a really special guest today who also happens to have become a really good friend. We were close when I was working with the WWE back in the day, but since we've run into each other across the world, really. And he was part of one of the most famous tag teams, one of the most revered during the days of tag teams when they were in their prime, and that was during the 80s and the 90s, and they were right there, the fabulous Rougeau brothers. And joining me today is Jacques Rougeau. Jacques, how are you? You look like you're having a really nice day. Look at
Well,
that.
Sean, thank you very much. Let me put it to you this way. I'd rather have the palm tree behind me than the snowplow. But
Yeah.
I became a snowbird now in the last few years, so it's fun to leave all that snow behind and spend my winters in Florida. So it's really lovely and great pool and great gym. I got a great gym
Yeah, look
here
at you. Look at
and
the
yeah,
guns.
having fun and still healthy at 65.
Yeah, you know, you really are. Hey, yeah, tell me about your life these days. I know that you travel all over the country, but you know, you're still based in Canada, and then also I know you spent a lot of time in Florida.
Life has been good to me, Sean,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
a great moment in life too was last year when I was for the love of wrestling in Europe. And
yep.
I met a great friend of mine that I always worshipped a lot, Sean Mooney. And it was so wonderful
Yeah.
to catch up with you, Sean. And that's what I love about these Comic Cons that I do all year long is I imagine how the fans feel because they haven't seen us in 25, 30 years, and then they come and meet us, and the way I felt when I met you at the Love of Wrestling, it was such a good feeling because got to tell the truth to the people that we were in those days when we were 25 days a month on the road, and we were more with the boys than we were with our families. And so the boys were our families, and and you and I always got along so well. Everybody loved you, Sean, and when I saw you, it really brought not only it brought me a heartwarming feeling to me, but it brought also these great memories that working with you, and you being such a professional
Mm.
and I'm very pleased today to do your podcast, and that's all I wanted to say, Sean. I really want you to understand that
Mm.
this is really a privilege for me to have caught back up with you in time, and what a great person you are.
Oh, dude, thank you. I really appreciate that. And I've always felt the same way. And of course, your brother Raymond was always a big favorite of mine too. You guys were always so much fun to be around, and you were so good at what you did. And it's interesting you say about how, you know, when you run into the boys, you know, back then, and we say the boys, that was the majority. We had some women that were involved in the time, but nothing like what it is today and what they've become. And we have people like Sensational Sherry to thank for that. But the big thing about it though is like you said, these guys, you guys were on the road for, you know, 25 days a month. Sometimes it might even stretch longer than that. And you were with these guys more than you were with your family. So it's really great to see when you do uh, get together at an event like that. It is like you saw them yesterday. I mean, isn't it amazing? Because we, like you mentioned, Manchester, we were there, and you know, Ron Simmons was there, and you know, all these guys. Jake was there. It was just, it's just amazing. But isn't that true? When you see these guys, it's like, hey, how are you?
Sean, what people don't realize and don't understand, which I'll be happy to explain, is in those days when we were together, you had good friends, you had people you knew, and you also had people you didn't like, and but most of that you didn't get along with, and
Yeah.
but most of the time, even the people that you liked and you knew, uh, there was this competitive edge. Like,
Hmm.
we always wanted to go up on the card, make more money, be in the angles, be featured. So there was always this competition. So when we meet today, 30 years later, we don't have anything else to prove now.
Right.
We're not there to win a position or to get a better payoff or nothing. So all the good sides come back and all the nice things about the boys that we like come out. And so that's what makes it really fun to meet these guys again on a different kind of mindset, if you'd like.
Yeah, and that's very true because at the time, and I talk about this, I've mentioned it many, many times during the podcasts, is that you were independent contractors. You didn't have guaranteed contracts. You didn't have guaranteed money. It was all based on whatever the house did. And some nights those houses were good, some nights they weren't so good, and your pay wouldn't be as much. A lot of people didn't know that, besides them paying for your flights, you guys were responsible for everything else. You had to pay the hotel, you had to pay for your food, you had to pay for transportation. And when you're doing that and you've got your head down just, trying to grind and you can't take a day off, you can't get hurt. And if you do, you got to play hurt, as they say. So it really, and of course, people see the wonderful side of it,
Cool.
what you guys were able to do. But behind the scenes, it was a pretty tough life.
And you're only as good, Sean, you're only as good as your last match, because if it or your last encounter in an airport or in a restaurant, every move
Yeah.
counted. If you had someone who brought back a bad message to the office or an agent, like your misbehavior or your match was no good, or then you were right away, on a probation, like
Yeah.
and so you couldn't afford to have bad matches then, and you couldn't afford to have some outside problems with the business, because there was so many people waiting in line to take your place,
Yeah.
and so, but when I look back, I think that I was lucky. Raymond and I were lucky. We were in the, even today, I find it funny when I say that, because I'm almost prejudiced, but it's almost like people come up to me and they say, Jacques, the 80s and the 90s were the best time of wrestling. And I think they're saying that because I was in the 80s and the 90s, but I'm hear it
No.
so often, Sean,
Yeah.
that it's like I'm starting to believe that we were in the best time of the
Oh.
business.
No, there's no question about that. And of course they meet you and they want to be, say really kind things, but there is so much truth to that because it was an era of professional wrestling that has never been matched since. It is like incredibly amazing that they've got, you know, uh, what was happening at the time. Vince McMahon changed the business completely, where it was, the territories and much smaller venues, and this was mainstream big time. And the characters were just incredible, and people loved it. And it was an era for tag teams, which that's where you started. You had other successes in your career, but the tag teams. I mean, I can't even remember how many we had. I know it was, way over 10 that were,
We were
uh,
fighting. We were all fighting. We were all fighting for a
right.
position. You're talking about the demolition, talking about the Bulldogs, the Harts, the Rockers, the Killer Bees, the Samoans, and it would go on with the tag teams. I'm missing some, and everybody was fighting for. But you know what the fun thing was, is in those days, maybe one exception or so, but the talent was amazing.
Uh,
The talent was great. So everybody had their own character, and
mhm.
like even in the singles match,
Yep.
like you talk about characters. I have so much fun. I have a big event coming on the 30th of May, which you're part of, and for me to have at our convention, to have a guy like you, the people that saw you all your life, to have Coco Beware, to have Hacksaw Jim Duggan, Jake the Snake, Lex Luger, Greg the Hammer Valentine, and the
Hmm.
Headbangers, and Jacqueline
Yeah.
and Sarah Page, which we met together
Yeah.
in London as China Syndrome, and Jerry Lawler, and like there's so much. But for me, it, and I think for the fans, Sean, the best, the way I look at life, you asked me how life is today. I live day by day now. I got about 10, 15 more years left and out of me. I'm
Yeah.
65 now. But
Oh, I
anyway,
hope more than that. Come on.
but all that to say, Sean, that for me in the last decade or so, I've learned to look at life differently. Like what makes me happy in life, it's not what's happening tomorrow. It's what happened in the past. It's
Mhm.
when I go back my souvenirs, I go back pictures, I go my memories. And when you go back like to our show we're having on the 30th of May, I can't imagine the fans are gonna see all these
Mhm.
superstars that used to come and rock their Sunday mornings and Saturdays on TV. They were part of their life. They were the the personalities that when they were jumping on their bed, they were imitating.
Yeah.
They were fighting as us. They were announcing as you. They were like, we were part of their life.
Yeah.
So that, and also for me, an organizer with four other partners in the show and it's like for me to not only put you guys there at different tables, but to see the thousands of people are going to come that day and the way they're going to look at you in their eyes and that happiness that you're going to
Mhm.
bring back their memories. For me, that really touches me a lot, Sean.
Yeah, you're talking about Legends Mania, which is taking place on May 30th, folks, in Gatineau, Quebec. And I'm really excited to be a part of it. We'll talk a little bit more about exactly what's going on with it and all the personalities there. But you mentioned what it's like when people come up to you. And this took me a while to get, Jacques, when I first, I had been out of wrestling for a long time. As you know, I went off and did other things in news and sports. But people would come up to me and say, "Oh, you were part of my childhood. You have no idea. It's so awesome." And I'd be kind of like, "Why in the world would they care?" I mean, Sean Mooney with the WWF, WWE. And then I finally got it. I remember there's a story. I went to one of these shows, and this guy came up to me, and he probably was in his 30s at this point, and he said, "I just got to tell you, when I saw you." And I heard your voice. He goes, it took me back to my childhood. And he said, my dad and I didn't get along, but you know what? He loved professional wrestling, and it was what connected us, and it made us better together. And it was like, boom, okay, now I get it. It's not about you. It's about what you were a part of. And it takes them back to a point in their lives where, they were happy. It was simple and they connected to a father or mom or brother or
Moments of their
whatever
life.
and
Moments.
friends. And it took them back, no worries, nothing. And I got to go into this world every week. Wrestling superstars or challenge, whatever it was that they watched or the pay-per-views. And then it was like, oh, now I get it, and I've totally embraced it ever since then. And I think that that's exactly what you're talking about. That these
And
people come up to
Sean,
you.
it's and to give you another example is like when people see Raymond and I,
Yeah,
they're very, very happy.
yeah,
But when they see Raymond, I, and Jimmy,
yeah,
it's like, wow. So it's like
uh,
when they were seeing us and they're seeing you with us and hearing your voice, which was iconic. And it's like that little ingredient that brings them closer to that's when they connect. Is when you
yeah,
put them in context. You really put them in context of like 30, 35 years ago. Hey, I've been there and done that. Like,
yeah,
and like you said, with my dad or and so many people, come up to me and tell me the same story that
yeah,
it's something that connected them in their good times of their life. And
yeah.
so yeah, it's amazing, and you're amazing, Sean. You really are. You're like me and Gene. I always loved you both, and loved you
Uh,
tremendously, and you were part of. And it was like for us also, the boys. We had. We had different, how it was TV days. We used to go in the arena and we had like 20 places to go for Japan, for Mexico, for this and for that. And then we had to do with different announcers. But as soon as we walked in the room and you were there or me and Gene was there, it was like for us, it was like homecoming. It was like not
yeah,
only homecoming, but it was a place that we felt safe. It was a
yeah,
place that I gotta admit there, I was pretty much with Raymond a one take kind of guy there. We didn't mess around with our promos, but
no,
when we did slip once in a blue moon, there you were to pick us up.
yeah.
And that's so we knew when we walked in the room with you, Sean, to do the promos that we were very, very comfortable.
You mentioned Gene, and I miss him every day. I mean, he was such a great mentor for me. And I've said it, I say it over and over again. People ask me, who do you think the greatest announcers are? Who do you think the greatest? And at least from what I did, I always say, look, there was Mean Gene Okerlund, and then there were the rest of us, because nobody matched Gene with the way he did things, how he could handle any situation, his dry sense of humor. There was nobody else like him, and
His
I know the
confidence
boys
was
always loved working with him.
his
Yeah,
confidence was amazing, and pretty
yeah,
much like yours, Sean.
yeah,
Both of you, I put you both on the same level, to be honest. And when you go into a room to do a promo, and you have a guy that projects confidence,
mm,
and then it just makes it so. I remember doing a promo, and actually remember meeting Brett a few times, but one time about 15 years ago, I met Brett and I was going on a show one day, and he told me, he says, Jacques, it's not like it used to be. He says, now
Mm,
they give you sheets. You got to read their script. You got
yeah.
to. Hey, I missed a time when I remember doing an interview with Mean Gene, and I ran out of an idea that sometimes you go on a
Yeah.
roll and then you just go blank. And
Yeah.
I went blank, and my promo was so good. And then instead of me stopping, I just went like, hey, what are you doing stepping on my shoe, Mean Gene Okerlund? Can't you stand
Yeah.
up on your own? Like, and I
Right.
just threw it off completely like he did step. And then he
Yeah.
was so good. He said, oh, folks, I'm sorry I stepped on Jacques Rougeau's
Right.
shoe.
Gives you a chance
And,
to, yeah.
he gave me a chance to, and my idea came back. And
Uh,
that's what made you and Mean Gene great, is you
uh,
could pick up the talent. And that was amazing.
yeah, that was our job. And I really appreciate that. You just mentioned about, interacting with the fans and stuff. And for you, it's even more special, I think, in a sense, for a lot of the fans out there, because your incident with Dynamite Kid is well documented. You and I actually talked, we did a podcast before and we did a really good deep dive into it. I know you've talked about it over and over again, but I know you embraced it later. It was a really difficult period of time of your life and the business, that people understood what it was like back then, that it wasn't like you went to management and saying, I'm having an issue with this employee. It was like, no, we got to settle this. And you've talked about how you knew I've got to do something, or pretty much my career is over. I won't have the respect of my peers, and I can't continue.
And my
And
father.
yeah, and your father, yes, and I want to talk about him as well and the family. But you've been an inspiration to a lot of people, and I know you've embraced it because back then, bullying and stuff that went on in schools, and a lot of kids that were facing the same kind of thing, you were dealing with it an adult level in a career that was, very high pressure. When did you realize, okay, maybe I can help some other people who are dealing with this? And I know that you have. And how did you, decide to do something about it?
Well, Sean, I think life puts you on a path sometime, and things happen, and it's funny how they happened. And everybody knew about the incident. I was just trying to pick myself up from that incident after. Even if I did do what I had to do, I was scarred for life. I knew it. And I remember this guy across the street. He was a he was a teacher at a school, and he came up to me and he says, Jacques, he says, I just want to say, man, he says, I'm sorry about what happened to you, and I'm glad you came out of it, heads up. And but would you do me a favor? He says, would you mind coming to our school and just talk to the kids, and tell them how you faced the bullying and how you came out of it. And I was saying to myself, I said, well, I could do it, but I'm certainly not going to talk about the roll of quarters, that I
Yeah.
that I took, because you don't want to teach the kids how to fight bullying with violence. You want to teach the kids how to fight bullying without using violence. And
Well,
it started like that. So I just went to the school, and I told everybody. I tried to explain them briefly that I was 6'3", 250 pounds, and I was a victim also. Like, anybody could be victim of bullying.
yeah,
Anybody. There's
yeah,
and that no matter what happened, the most important thing was to talk about it, to get it
yeah,
out to somebody, whether it's a school teacher, whether it's the law, whether it's your parents, not to keep it inside of you. And
yeah,
over the years, when I did that conference, it just so happened I had a good one. So that school called another school, and then that school called another school. And the next thing you know, for
mm,
25 years, I did every school there is possible in Quebec and Eastern Ontario, and I'd go do it. And it was funny because I was doing it for free, and
yeah,
people were saying you're crazy to do it for free. And what they didn't understand was, for me, they think I was helping the kids, but at the time it was therapy for me.
oh,
And it was a therapy. And like
uh,
when you go to a therapist, when you're an alcoholic or something, for me, I was I needed a therapist of bullying, and it helped me to see and to learn about it. And finally, I became an expert on how to help the kids by holding each other's hand, by backing each other's in the locker room, by doing this, that the bullies can't face 20. And I give the kids the reasons why the bullies were so strong, how they were nourishing themselves with all the bad cracks or the bad insults they do to fat people or ugly people or this and all the other people that were behind them in the class, and they were laughing to encourage him, not because they were happy of doing it, but just they were protecting themselves because they knew if they backed the bully that they wouldn't become a victim. You know, as
Right.
long as they backed them up, they wouldn't on excuse my language, but they wouldn't be on their shit list. So
Yeah.
they were, so it was selfishly protecting yourself. And I explained that to the kids, but I told them, if the bully says something bad, mean to somebody, and nobody encourages him, sure, at the beginning, the bully's going to start staring you down here and there and there. But if he's alone to stare, he's
Hmm.
going to stop staring. And
Yeah.
if you guys hang on to each other and you back each other up, because remember, it could happen to you. Now you're his friend, but maybe tomorrow you'll be his enemy. You know,
Yeah.
and I brought all this information to help the kids, and it made me feel so good about myself, and it made me feel great that I was helping in society a cause that was so harmful to me, and so bad to me. So all that to say that so a good thing came out of this bad thing,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
but I'm proud that I did that. I still, now it's funny because I stopped doing them in the last, since COVID. I'm not doing any more speeches in schools, and I get emails every week.
Uh-huh.
Hey Jacques, would you come back? Jacques, now I've done it enough. For 25 years, I've done it. Now I'm out of that. I don't feel comfortable doing that anymore. There comes a
Uh-huh.
time where, you just want to turn the page.
Yeah.
But it was something awesome that I did that I'm very happy that I did.
Yeah, and I'm sure you helped an awful lot of people. And I also know you realized that during that therapy, as you call it, you kind of realize a lot of these kids that are bullies, they have some really deep issues and scars emotionally themselves.
I
That's why
told
they do it. And it's unfortunate what happened to Dynamite Kid. I'm sure that you never wanted to see him end up the way he did. But you told me before we started recording here that you had an encounter recently that was related to this. Tell me about it.
Well, Sean, I'm going to take a couple of minutes to tell you what's going
Yeah,
on. That big show that you're talking about, Legends Mania, on May
yeah,
30th. I'm 65 years old, and 6 months ago, I decided, like, hey, I got a little fat. Like, I was up to 270, and now I'm down to 245. I lost
yeah,
25 pounds since, but I didn't have a reason we always trained all our lives. All my life was in a gym because I had a reason to. I had to go in
yeah.
public. I had to go in the ring. And so I wanted to find some inspiration. So I went ahead and put myself in this Royal Rumble on May 30th, and that was 6 months ago. I said, well, that'll give me a reason to train,
Yeah.
and if it worked out, because I lost 25 pounds, I'm in great shape. But the thing is my partners, because it's a 5,000 person venue, and in the last 3 years they've been drawing 3,000 people, which is a great crowd. They
Huh.
wanted to maybe sell tickets or something, but they got a hold of Harry Smith, and Harry Smith is the son of Davy Boy Smith, and
Hmm.
they asked him to be in the Royal Rumble with me, and without even consulting me. And I said that
Hmm.
was something they just wanted to sell tickets. But I said,
Right.
hey, it's okay. I said, you guys messed up because I'm friends with Harry Smith and I'm friends with Davy Boy,
Yeah.
because Davy
Yeah.
Boy, after the incident in '89, he came back in '91 when I was the Mounty,
Yeah.
and he came in the dressing room, and the first time, and I remember
Right.
I hadn't seen him in 2 years. And I thought that part of my life was over. And when I
Yeah.
saw the card in Philadelphia, I saw, how the cards were hanged up on the wall there, and I saw the Mountie and Davy Boy Smith, the British Bulldog. I went like,
Oh
and
boy.
I had a shock, and I said, "Oh no, not him again! Like, not the Bulldogs again!" And then, and when Davy Boy came in the room that night in the Spectrum, he walked in the dressing room, and in front of all the boys, I guess all the boys know how it is. The word
Like
goes
car,
out
like
fast.
looking.
And so all the boys were waiting for him to come in, and I was sitting by the door. And as soon as he walked in, he looked at me and he says, "Trucker, can we go in the shower? I'd like to talk to you."
Oh
And I
boy.
went like,
Yeah. Oh boy. Here we go. Yeah. That's where you
so I
go when
said,
you're settling things.
So I have pride. So before he had time to finish his sentence, I said, "Sure, no problem." I didn't
Hmm.
want to show him I was
Yeah.
excuse my language, shitting in my pants.
Yeah.
I was dying. I was afraid so much, but I kept my distance. So when we got into the shower, I let him go in first, and I kept my distance. And then he looked at me, and by the time I came into the door, he was about 4 or 5 feet away from me. He had his hand extended like this, and then he said, "Jacques," he says, "I want bygones to be bygones." He says, "What you did to Dynamite," he says, "he deserved it." He says, "I don't want to have no more trouble." He says, "I would like us to be able to be friends, or to at least to work
Wow.
together." And I shook his hand, and I felt so relieved. So
Yeah.
so that happened at the time. And then I took a picture with his son, Harry, who was about 5, 6 years old. He was in the
Wow.
dressing room. I took a
Yeah.
picture with him. But since he's been signed back in this match here, he's been doing some funny stuff. We all know that wrestling is a work. Wrestling
Yeah.
is pre-planned, everything. But he's been sending funny messages, and the message that he's been sending, he doing podcasts also. He did one with Jimmy Cordero, who used to referee at the time, and Donnie De Silva. He did a podcast lately, and he said that he even sent me a promo. He sent a promo to me saying, "Hey, I can't wait to go to Gatineau, Quebec, and blah, blah, but I can't wait more to get in the Royal Rumble to be with you, Jacques Rougeau." And then he's very serious. I thought it was a joke, this. And next thing you know, is he went into a podcast, and he said that he wasn't mad at me, but he said he was a little deceived, that he was sad that in the last 30 years, Jacques Rougeau goes everywhere in podcasts saying how bad the British Bulldogs were instead of
Hmm.
Dynamite Kid. He's always including my dad in that. He's ruining the reputation of the British Bulldogs instead of Dynamite Kid. And so he's a little offense that I always cut down the British Bulldogs. But like I explained to Diana's mother, which I talked to a couple of weeks ago, I said, "Diana, you better talk to Harry, because Harry doesn't understand that I'm not referring to his dad. I'm just referring to the name of the team that were known. So people, when I say if I say Dynamite Kid, not everybody's going to know that. But
Right.
if I say the British Bulldogs, then everybody knows, because that's how they were more known." So I said, "You could tell Harry that, I never meant to insult him or nothing,
No.
but he's doing some podcasts now, and he's funny because he's saying it lightly, like, I'm not mad at Jock, but he says, maybe, when you go to the bank, you get a receipt, and he knows. So he's insinuating he's
Right.
doing some little mini bullying, if you want, there,
Well,
and
generating some heat, as
he's
we
trying
say.
to. I don't know if he's trying to
Yeah.
sell tickets or get
Yeah.
some attention, but I'm telling you, Harry, I love you, Harry. I got along good with your
Yeah.
dad. So take it easy, Harry. We're going to this Royal
We're gonna have some
Rumble.
fun.
Let's
Yeah.
have some fun.
And Harry
And
is a great guy. I've spent a lot of time with him. Did some podcasts.
really,
I've done Diana. If you remember when we went to Wembley, at that SummerSlam, that she was there, and she's a wonderful person. The whole family in Georgia too. So
this
I'm really
weekend,
looking forward
this
to them being there. Yeah.
Don, this weekend. So let me
Yeah.
tell you what happened this weekend. You talk about
Okay.
the funniest thing ever, the weirdest thing ever. So I'm at this WrestleCon 80s this weekend that just passed by, and so this woman comes up, good looking girl. She comes
Hmm.
up to me, and I never refuse a picture with a good looking girl. So always behaving, but I never
Yeah.
refuse a picture.
Of
And
course.
then so she comes up to me and she says, "Jacques, can I have a picture with you?" And I said, "Sure thing." And so I got her in the picture. I take a great picture. I put her against me like this, and I'm holding her in my arms, and I look at the picture, and then I keep doing to my business. So then she looks up to me. She says, "Jacques, you don't know do you know who I am?" I said, "Oh yeah, that's my Mounty line. Do you know
Yeah.
who I am?"
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
And,
I think
I
she's
thought she
working.
was
Yeah.
referring to that.
Yeah.
And I said, "That's my line."
Mhm.
She says, "No." She says, "I'm Dynamite Kid's daughter."
Wow.
I swear, I put my two hands in my face like this. I froze. I got embarrassed. I felt bad. I can't
Mhm.
explain. I'm still figuring out how I felt, but I was so lost in emotions. And anyway, long story short is we spoke 30 minutes long, and the 30
Wow.
minutes long, and never about the incident, but all about how I felt and how she felt, and how, don't feel bad, Jock. I forgive you. She told me, "I forgive you," and I'm thinking to myself, "You forgive me? What are you forgiving me about?" And I just took care of myself, but I didn't say it then.
Right. Yeah.
I was trying to figure out where we were going. So she finally tells me, she says, "Jacques," she says, "I would like to have you on my podcast." in next week. And I looked at her and I said, after I sized the conversation the way it was going, I told her, I said, okay, I'll do your podcast on one condition. She says, what? I said, I tell the truth of what happened. I said, you may not like everything you're going to hear, but I said, I'm going to tell the truth. And she says, no problem. So I can't wait. I'm going to be doing her podcast,
Oh, so you
but
haven't done it yet?
I'm not holding any punches. You know, when I go
No.
on there, I'm going to explain to them what kind of people, because, because at one point she told me just before leaving, she said, the only thing I had, that I felt bad of is you didn't have to go so excessively, strong when you made your statement,
No.
and I said and I said to her, I didn't say to her, well, don't you remember your dad when he attacked me? I was playing cards with Mr. Perfect, and he came from behind and he slapped me off my chair and hit me on my ear. And my cards went
Yeah.
flying. I
Yeah.
said that was, I didn't tell her that, but I'm going to tell her
You're
that
going to
on her
mention that,
podcast.
yeah.
I'm
No.
going to tell her, and that's why. And the other thing too is, I'm going to tell her, in case she didn't know, that her dad was on steroids, on alcohol, on pills, and he's a badass. Like
Yeah.
he was a tough guy,
Yeah.
and I'm an artiste. I'm not a real tough guy.
Well,
Raymond's a tough guy. My
yeah.
dad's a tough guy,
It's
but
a
I
it's a work. Yeah.
I'm an entertainer,
Yeah.
and so I had to do what I had to do to make sure that the job was done. And plus, it was my dad's idea; it wasn't even mine. It's my dad that told me the night before to do that.
Yeah.
So
Well, I remember the conversation. You said that you knew what you had to do and you knew when you were going to do it. And you knew you had to make that call. You had to call your dad and say, this is what I'm planning on doing. And I think you were expecting him to say, hey, what you're going to jeopardize everything. And he's the one that told you, okay.
no, I felt.
Yeah.
But you know why I called my dad, Sean? In case people didn't hear that first podcast, I called my dad because a week before, when I got beat up in Miami, my dad was there in the stands, and he beat me up pretty bad. The hunchback of Notre Dame was my face. The bump, I had my face, and the blood on the floor, and I was laying on the floor. And then my father brought me home that night, and then from that day on, I never spoke to Raymond or my dad the whole week. Like I was in the same car, same rooms,
Mhm.
traveling and just doing my thing. And every night the Bulldogs would come in the dressing room and bang their bags around me and bully me and intimidate me. And I always kept my head down, like, please don't hurt me no more,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
hurt me no more. And
Yeah.
and so my dad, I hadn't spoke to him in a week. So before I did that comeback, I was not doing it for me. I was doing it for my dad because my dad was my hero. So I called him up just to say, "Hey, I'm doing this," but I didn't expect him to tell me to go at the bank and get a roll of quarters.
Quarters. Yeah.
And then I start. He made. I'll tell you what. I didn't sleep that night because
Uh,
I was always saying to myself, "What if I miss? Like what if he's going to kill me? He's going to put me in a wheelchair if I miss." So I had to so that was a long night. I'll remember that night forever.
uh,
But then anyway.
yeah. But no, it's something that is a big part of your life. And, you know, like I said, it's unfortunate what happened with Tom, but everybody knew that that's the person he was then. And whether or not it was the influence of what he was putting into his body or whatever, he was a mean guy. I always loved Davy Boy. I just felt that, that Tom had a big influence over him and
Yeah.
like a big brother, and so he kind of went with whatever they were doing, and he basically
Exactly.
had to because Tom could be
I think
he could be so cruel. Yeah, he could
Davy
be.
Boy may have been afraid of Dynamite.
Yeah, no, he could be cruel, and we know ribs. Everybody experienced them. I did. Everybody, and to some extent. But then there was also some to a next level where it wasn't really a rib. It was just mean, nasty. They weren't ribs. They were just there was just cruel behavior, and he was very capable of that. I hope that I think later in life maybe he regretted some of that. I don't know, but it's unfortunate that that's how his life ended up because the two of us will absolutely agree he was one of the best
Oh,
wrestlers in the ring ever. I mean, when he
oh,
hit the scene, and he was a small guy, and he proved and set the standard for not just tag team wrestling, but for wrestling in itself. I mean, over in Japan, he was huge, and they couldn't wait to get him. So it's unfortunate, but
we had a we had a
that's
match. We had a match with them in Madison Square Gardens. Me and Raymond against the Bulldogs. We did a 20-minute Broadway,
Mhm.
And if you have a chance on a Summer Slam, so you could go see it
Yeah.
anytime, you're gonna see what amazing. And when we came in, Raymond and I,
Yeah.
we were so fond of the Bulldogs. We were like,
Yeah.
this is a level higher than us. Like
Yeah.
this is, and the funniest thing is when I finished the conversation after putting my hands down for about 5 minutes
Yeah.
talking to Jewel, her name is, I think, Dynamite's daughter, Dynamite Doll, I think she goes by.
Yeah. Right.
But when I finished the conversation with her, the last thing she asked me before I left, she says, "Can I ask you a favor, Jacques?" I said, "Sure." She says, I want to induct my father in the Hall of Fame. But anyway, I was thinking about Dynamite, how what a great talent he was. Like,
No.
just an amazing talent. It was just, and so I signed the document for him to be inducted in the Hall of Fame.
No, he deserved. I mean, if you look at it from what he contributed to the business, yes,
Absolutely,
absolutely. And
absolutely.
they always say that with a lot of sports. Do you weigh in whatever they're off the playing field in a sense? But definitely, as far as what he did for professional wrestling, no doubt about it. There's no question. I want to take you back, Jacques, because you mentioned your father, and I know you had a brother, Armand, who was a talented athlete as well, and of course Raymond. And to those early days, before you came to the WWF, I don't think a lot of people know the rich history of your family as far as the professional wrestling, how far it goes back generation wise. And then also what Canadian wrestling was like back then. They had some pretty established territories with, Maple Leaf Wrestling and the others that they outfits that they had. Stampede, of course, with the Hart family. So tell me, take me back to those days and tell us about your family.
Well, our family was iconic, and up till today, now you can't go in Quebec without mentioning the name Rougeau without
Yeah.
people turning their head because
Hmm.
we're talking of four generations of wrestlers,
Wow.
and we're
Yeah.
talking my great uncle Eddie Auger, and then my uncle Johnny and my father, and then the era of Raymond, myself, and Armand, and then
Mm.
there was my three sons after that wrestled that in Quebec. And in those days, what made it really special is there was a lot less TV. Like, you had like
Yeah.
three TV stations. So when you were
Hmm.
on Sunday morning at prime time, like 9 o'clock in the morning, and you were in everybody's household, everybody in the planet
Yeah.
knew you. Like, and I'm thinking of guys, and Montreal was such a big territory. Like, guys, so many talent came out of there. Abdullah the Butcher came out of there. Like, as Larry Shreves, he was known to be Abdullah the Butcher in Montreal. Ivan Koloff was a guy from Ontario that was on a tour in Japan for Inoki with my dad and my
Hmm.
uncle. And my dad looked at him in the dressing room one night and he says, "You know what? You'd be a great Russian guy." And he was a guy from Ontario, and so my dad gave him the name Ivan Koloff.
Ivan Koloff.
And then one day he went to beat Bruno Sammartino for the World Championship in Madison Square Garden. And plus, we all know his career he had. Montreal, you talk about, when we look back, I think of Greg the Hammer Valentine, which was awesome. I enjoyed so much working with him. But let's talk about his daddy, Johnny Valentine. His daddy, Johnny Valentine, used to work with my dad and my uncle at the Montreal Forum. And Montreal was known to be one of the biggest territories in the world. Like, where a lot of talent came from. And it was good times. Raymond and I, if we go back in our generations in the late 70s and 80s,
Yeah.
we worked as a tag team. My God, we met so many. Pat Patterson and Frenchie Martin, Pat Patterson and Pierre Doug Lefebvre, the Garvins, Jimmy and Ronnie Garvin. We had feuds that would put 20,000 people in the Montreal
Wow.
Forum, like back-to-back shows. Montreal was a huge, huge territory, and it was good times for me. Before I went to WWF, I had my boat at the marina. I was a superstar in my home province, and everywhere I went, people always and I always had the nice image. I was a baby face. I was always nice to the fans. I was always go on my way to answer them or be nice to them, take a picture with them. So I was living a dream life, before I came to WWF.
Yeah. Well, and before that happened, and it was a pretty good rapid ascension for you guys. You start in Canada. I think was it always basically this is what I'm going to do? I think you started in the ring I don't know if it was professionally, but when you were around 16, isn't that the case? And then was that always kind of the way it was going to be? And same with Ray?
Yeah, Ray started in 72, and then I
Yeah.
started, he's 5 years older than me. I
Right.
started in 77, and I started for Stu Hart in Calgary. That was my first
Okay.
territory. And that was amazing. It's so funny with the history going on now. And before that, I was 4 and 5 years old, Sean, and I
Yeah.
was around and you're talking about wrestling in Quebec, where my dad was my hero, my main eventer, and my uncle. And on Sunday nights, we lived by the St. Lawrence River. We had a nice pool on the water, and Sunday nights, the wrestlers would come over to my place, the main eventers that were going against my dad on Monday nights, because it was Monday night, the big night, like Monday Night Raw, but it was Monday night, Paul Sauvé or Forum in Montreal. And Sunday nights, the night before, the wrestlers would show up at home. And I remember I was 4 or 5 years old. They'd come around the pool, and
Yeah.
Joe Leduc with all his scars, like from up on top to the bottom, and the Sheik and Abdullah and all those guys that used to wrestle my dad. They used to come over my house, and I end up starting to imitate them. Like I'd put a sheet on my head and I started going Web Sheik Web, and I'd have so much fun imitating them that at the age of 4 years old. And it's so funny because a lot of people ask me in life, Jacques, was it predetermined for you to become a wrestler? How did you become a wrestler? What made you become a wrestler? Well, I was good at what I did.
Yeah.
Humbly speaking, I was a good imitator, and I was imitating these wrestlers
You're
real
always a
good.
performer. Yeah.
I was entertaining the people so much they were saying, "Oh man, you're gonna be a wrestler just like your dad. You're gonna be a wrestler." So that's what really brought me into wrestling. I think it's the fans that brought me into wrestling.
Yeah. And Raymond too. I mean, was he this
Raymond was more
you're
serious.
two very different. Yeah, you guys are
Yeah,
two very different people. There's no question about it. But
Raymond. When I was having a sheet on my head imitating Abdullah, Raymond was counting money.
yeah.
He was
Never stopped, did he?
never stopped either. He's the mayor now of his city, just to show you what an
Oh man.
accomplishment. He's on his second
Yes.
term too, so
Yeah.
people love him. So Raymond's
Oh.
always been the smart one between us, no doubt about that.
I don't know. I don't know, but who had more fun? I,
uh,
I
I'll tell
think
you, I
it,
enjoyed life more than him, but anyway, but he's definitely the smarter one. Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So when did it really did you guys get serious? And I don't know if your dad had the idea, you guys need to be a tag team. I mean, how did that where you started to get serious and it became a business for you guys?
Well, I was on the road a lot. I was doing small territories like Kentucky, uh,
Mhm.
I was with the Fullers in Tennessee. I was with Memphis, Tennessee with Jerry Lawler. I was
Mhm.
in Pensacola with the Fullers. I was in Kansas City with Bob Geigel, Pat O'Connor, and them. I was doing small territories. I went to Mexico. Those were the late '70s, and
Yeah, but
then
paying your dues, I guess you'd say.
yeah,
You
and
were
learning
yeah.
the business
Yeah,
and learning
right,
the
right.
business. To go to Mexico, you're going to learn some things, I'll tell you. And so I was going out there and I was learning the trade. But year after year in the summertime, I'd come back to Montreal. And
Hmm.
Raymond, and now I'm talking about 78, 79, 80. Those are the big years I was traveling a lot. And Raymond had started in 72. And he was just rolling his track. He was going like on the same track all the time. And then finally, uh, I was coming back from these 6 month tours, and I was coming back with some good luggage. Some I was stealing moves from
Just
everybody everywhere I was going. So when
uh,
I'd come back to my home base fans, which had never seen these moves before, then I started getting really popular. Like people were saying the same, and I was growing. I was getting more mature. I was up to 245. I had nice
yeah,
blonde hair, and I was like, and so I had pretty much the total package at the time for what at the time I'd put in the business, and
yeah.
uh, and that's when I think that my dad and my brother Raymond started saying Raymond would probably start saying like, hey, before he passes in front of me there, let's make a team, and before he goes ahead of
Yeah.
me,
Yeah.
let's make a team. And so we made a team, and then started in the early '80s, and it never stopped, and then
Yeah.
all the way to the end of the '80s, and we did 5 years together in Montreal and in Quebec, and then we did 4 years in WWF, so we did like a
Yeah.
9 years together.
Yeah. Now, I'm sure you guys began to notice what was happening down in the United States there with Vince McMahon, and it became as he started to take over territories across the country and spread these shows all over the place. I'm sure you took notice. Did you start to realize like that's where we need to be? And how did that connection happen to where you ended up going?
It's so funny because you're going to be surprised about this. Like in 1985, Dino Bravo owned the business in Montreal with Rick
Mm,
Martel. And by them owning the business, well, they were putting themselves main event, and they were
hmm
putting us on like on fourth and fifth, and I wasn't happy with where we were in the position. So I told my brother Raymond in '85. I says, listen. I said we're on fourth every night. They're on seventh every night. They're making all the money. We're on fourth, and I said and then every time we get to a house show, they'd switch the matches. They'd put themselves on fourth, and they'd put us on last. So we'd have
uh,
to do the hard job. So I told Raymond, I said, hey, we got to be paid for this. We got to be recognized for this. We were a better draw than them in Montreal and in the province of Quebec. So me and Raymond together. So I told him we got to quit. So we quit. And one fall we quit, and then I went to Pensacola. And when I went to Pensacola, Pat Patterson had heard that we had quit. So Pat Patterson called me in Pensacola, and he was and Raymond and my brother Armo had returned with Dino and Ricky because they were doing nothing during the winter, so they were
yeah.
finding the winter long. So they finally made up with Dino and they went back. And I had told Raymond and Arma, don't go back because
Hey,
if they don't have the Rougeau name, that's our power. If you go back, you just take all away the power. And they decided that it would be better if they went back. And they said, if you want to go on the road, you could go, but we don't. I said, okay. So I did my own little thing in '85 there for a bit, and that's when Pat heard about the separation, and he called me right away, and he says, Jacques, he says, the WWF is going to Verdun, which is across the bridge from Montreal. We're going to Verdun for the first show, and we'd like to have you in main event against Samu, like the Samoan Samu. And I
yeah,
said that was her first time in Montreal, and I said, you got it. I'm
yeah,
going to use
I'm
all the
in.
leverage I can to get my
Yeah.
deal back like I wanted. And uh, and I remember that day. I'm telling you something personal here, but I got to tell you because it's the truth. Dino sent my dad at the airport to pick me up that night, and my dad begged me. He says, Jacques, don't do this show tonight. Don't do the show. He says, Dino's going to give you everything you want. He's going to give you the belts. He's going to give you the money. But it was too late. The
Too
damage had
late.
been
Yeah,
done. And I already
yeah.
gave my name and I already gave my word to Pat. So finally, it's so funny because I did the show. We People loved. They were so
Yeah.
happy to see me back again. And what a great match I had with Samu. What a great worker. And I ended up beating him with a crossbody block off the top rope, and people popped. That was the main event, last moment in the match, last moment of
Yeah.
the evening. And I went back to Pensacola. And then when I went back to Pensacola, and it's funny because I remember telling my dad at the airport, I said, Dad, if you don't want to bring me to this show because he told me not to go, I said, I'll take a taxi. I said, you have a
I'm
choice.
going. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
come, you come to see me work or you don't. So finally he came to see me work, and he brought me to the show. And when I went back to Pensacola, my phone started ringing from Pat.
See.
He said, Jacques, he says, Vince wants to meet you. Vince wants you to come in. And I was going, no, it's okay because I already got my deal now back set in Montreal. I didn't want to go in that jungle. I
Yeah.
certainly didn't want to go alone with all these monsters and all those things I was hearing, like the steroid era and everything.
Yeah.
I was afraid to go alone, to be honest. So I said, no, thank you, Pat. No, thank you. I'm going to go back to Montreal. So I went back to work the next summer with Raymond, and then the whole summer, I'm telling you, Sean, if I didn't get 100 calls, I didn't get one. And even Vince called me at one time. And he says, Jacques, I'd like for you to come in. He says, I'd like for you and Ricky Martel to come in as a team. He wanted me and Ricky Martel. And I said, no,
Uh,
thanks. No, thanks. I said, I'll go in at two conditions. I want $5,000 a week, and I want to come in with my brother Raymond. I said, then I'll come in. And then they said, agreed. So then I told Raymond and this, and then we agreed, and then we came in, me and Raymond.
see, what a story.
What a story,
That-
huh?
yeah, and the timing of it couldn't have been better. What do you think it was that tag teams were so popular then? I know it wasn't the case, but it seemed like we had as many tag teams as we had singles. I mean, we had some great tag teams. You mentioned them earlier, but what do you think it was so big?
I got the answer to that. The teams in those days had two things that were better than anybody: psychology,
Hmm
and that was one thing, and they were talented. So you had talent and psychology. So that's why the division of the tag team became so strong.
Oh,
Because
man.
when you're 1 against 1 in the ring, it could be a great match, but it'll never be as exciting as 4 in the ring. Because
Yeah.
as you know, Raymond and I, as example, when we were working, example, the Rockers. I'd go in with Sean and I'd do a spot, bing, boom, 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 bing, like a hockey. In hockey, they have
Yeah.
30 seconds on the ring, and then they get out. Like they go take a break. But in a ring, it's the same time. You got to pace yourself. But when you tag team, you could double the amount of fun, because I'd go in with Sean and I'd go 100 miles an hour, boom, 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 boom. Then I'd tag Raymond and he'd tag Marty. Marty come in and boom, 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 boom. And it was like there was always action packed. And plus we had the good motto of less is more. We
Yeah.
Everything we did meant something. Like today in our business, I haven't watched wrestling in 30 years, so I'm not talking of experience. I'm just talking what I hear. But today, a guy who receives a drop kick, he's up on his feet before the guy who gave it.
Yeah.
And in
And
my
sell.
day,
Yeah.
if I gave a drop kick to someone, I'd have the heel on the floor for about 15 seconds holding his mouth, and I'd have time to react to the crowd, and vice versa. When a heel would do a move to a baby face, I used to love to sell, to
Yeah.
die, and to
Yeah.
hurt. And while the heel would turn around and have interaction with the crowd, like, look
Yeah.
at him now. Look at him now. Who's going to go up the top rope? And who's the number one? And he'd get all that heat while
Yeah.
the baby face was hurting. But so the knowledge and the talent mixed together with all those teams that we had made it that the tag team division got better than the singles division. I think had more tension, and then the competition got bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
So that's my answer to that question.
It was, yeah, and that's a really good answer, because you're right. It just, the people that they had then, the talent was just incredible. And it's very difficult to try and say, what was this team better than that tag team? And you like working with this one better, whatever. But, and I'm not going to ask you to do that, because I think that would be too tough. But you really did have magic with the Rockers. And you guys had these, like, I don't know how many 60-minute matches you had. I think it was 6 or 7 of them. That I wish they were well documented. I don't know if they are, but if anybody ever gets a chance to see them, I mean, think about it. 1 solid hour, and there was not a second in there. Like oh, what was it about them that made you guys work so well together?
Chemistry, I guess. And like I
Yeah.
said, the great workers. Just humbly speaking, 4 great workers in there,
No.
and complicity. And it was amazing, because I remember one time I was in London and we had this marathon match, which they were called marathon matches
Yeah.
at the time, which was an hour, and the one who won the most falls during the hour would win. And we had one in London in the afternoon, and then we flew to Philadelphia. But since it was 6 hours earlier or later,
Yeah.
so we did one at 1 in the afternoon. We took a 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock flight, and we
Wow.
landed 6 hours later in Philadelphia. It was still 4 o'clock, and we went in the ring at the Spectrum, and we did
Did it
another hour,
again.
and we did two in one day. And but
Wow.
the best story I have with that one is like you said, there was ribs in those days, but we played good ribs. And we played a
Yeah.
rib on Vince at the Madison Square Garden one night. He put Pat had told him, "You got to have this marathon match, Vince." He says, "This, you're not going to believe it." He said, it's never going to seem like an hour." And
Yeah.
then because we always had people on their feet for the whole time, different times, different reasons, and sometimes personality, sometimes high spot, sometimes, but we had the people on their feet the whole time, and had them cheering or booing, and at the very end of the match, 60 minutes went by, and it was 6-6. It was 6-6, and we didn't tell Vince. And then Vince was like, he was pissed off. I heard, because he wanted the Rockers to go over. So
Yeah.
I took the microphone and rolled out the floor. I said, "I want overtime." I said, and we went 12 minutes overtime, and then the Rockers beat
You
us.
got it.
And then
Wow.
when we got back in the dressing room, Vince was like, we outsmarted him. And we went back, and he
That's
left, and he
brilliant.
could have
Yeah.
gave us shit. Oh, sorry, he could have gave us hell because we went too long, but it was so entertaining. So
Yeah.
many false finishes in that overtime. Like people. So Vince, probably not knowing what was going on, he was
Right.
probably a mark.
What the hell they doing out there? What the
But
hell? Get the
but he could
heck
saw the reaction of the crowd, and when the Rockers, let me tell you something. Marty Jannetty, what a great guy, what a great
Mhm.
underrated wrestler.
Yeah.
Sean already has the credit; he's a great wrestler. But a great team that I always like now in the last few years to mention that I think that they're unnoticed and not noticed enough or underrated as the Killer Bees.
Oh
And
yeah.
you know, let me tell you something about the Killer Bees. You
Mm.
ask me who I like to work with, who are the safer worker, who are the workers that have good psychology, who are the workers that deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. I'm
Hmm.
telling you, the Killer Bees. And when you think of all these tag teams that are all these guys that are in the Hall of Fame and everybody, they it takes two to dance, or it takes four to dance when you're a tag team. And like I say in movies, to create a good Batman, you need a great Joker. And you know, in this business it takes two to tangle. And
Yes.
so all these guys that have worked with us and worked back and forth, and like you say, you could never judge to see who was best. I think it was more like who complemented more each other, because they were all great teams.
Yeah.
I think everybody that was in WrestleMania 3 at the Pontiac Silverdome in front of 94,000 people plus the world watching should be in the Hall of
Yeah. And you mentioned some of these guys, the Killer Bees, and there's more names out there who were incredible hands, as they say, in the ring. Really, really talented guys that could have been on the same and were on the same talent level as some of these other guys, but it just didn't play out. They didn't get the right gimmick. It just the timing
Fame.
was wrong. Right?
No, not only that, you know, it's like I tell the people today. Now I'm not embarrassed to tell the people today. If when the fabulous Rougeau brothers ended in '89, only 2 years as becoming the fabulous, if we would have beat all the teams, if we would have got the belts, if we would have got the exposure, if we would have got the pencil behind us in the
Yeah.
writing, in the script, and if we would have, you know, some guys they make me laugh. They go and they say, well, I won 17 titles, you know, or I won this
Mm.
title. Hey, wake up, son. You, with the 17 titles that you won them against somebody. And that
Right.
somebody was there to make you look good.
Put you
Nobody's
over.
better
Yeah.
than the others. We were all as good one as the other. Everybody needs to be recognized for the talent. I love a guy like Steve Lombardi. Steve Lombardi, the biggest jobber that we had in the
Yeah.
territory, what a great worker. Every time we'd go in the ring with Steve Lombardi, we'd come out of the ring and we'd look like $1 million. So who made
Yeah.
us look like $1 million? It's Steve Lombardi. He
Yeah.
deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. You know what I'm saying? So there's a lot of underrated talent that were just getting beat. But if they would have got the push, if they would have got the being in the angles, like
Mhm.
some, I don't want to go into how people got their angles in those days, what favors that they had to do or got. But anyway, long story short is, we were straight workers and we worked hard, and we didn't have any brown nose. When it was
Yeah.
right, it was right. When it was wrong, it was wrong. And I honestly think that when I think of the Hart Foundation, you know, I think of the Hart Foundation. I think we created the Hart Foundation. We worked with them for 4 years. For 2 years, we were babyface; they were heels, and then Jimmy switched to us, and then they were babyface for 2 years. We were heels for 2 years, and we were married together for like
Yeah.
almost 4 years. And so I'll think that there's not much difference in the talent. I think also that another thing too that people don't realize is when a guy uh, gets in angles, gets in the scripts, gets in the scenarios, he gets more incentive to go deeper and put their heads together to make a better scenario, to get more into it. But it's not because they were better than others. It's just that they
No.
had the opportunity. If other guys would have had the opportunity and they would have had the wind underneath their wings, well, they would have been more creative because they would have had more incentive. They would have had more inspiration. But when you're getting beat night after night after night after night after night, and you're doing all that hard work, then you lose inspiration. You
Right.
lose. So you just go out there and you do your job. But as far as the talent goes, we were all the same. I think
Yeah.
everybody was all talent. Everybody needs to be in the same boat.
Yeah. And that's what I believe led to success for a lot of the tag teams. You mentioned that it's not just about you. It's like you've got to help put them over because you're not going to go over either. And you hear, I've recently spoke with Barry Darso and talking about demolition with Bill Eadie, and he said that was their whole attitude too. When you went into the ring, it wasn't like how are we going to get over tonight. It's like how we're going to put these guys over that are in the ring with us because when we do that, they return the favor and it makes us look good. And it's amazing. And he said everybody wanted to work with us because of that. And that's exactly like why people wanted to get into the ring with the Rougeau brothers. You guys understood that mentality. And maybe it's because of where you came from. in your family and you understood the business. But it's I don't know. It's like kind of a lost art. You don't see that psychology today. That
You
is,
know, I used to.
and a lot of it is too, Jacques, is that you're not given the time to do it either. Like you said, could you imagine that they wanted to do a 60-minute match today? People would be like, are you out of your minds? They can't take 10, 20 minutes. You're like it's just a whole different part of the
No, no.
business that just is
I, wo-
lost.
I worked one night with Randy Savage in England, the Mounty against Macho Man with
Mm.
Elizabeth in the corner, and I knew Randy thought a lot of himself, and he was very protective of his image and all that,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
he came out of the feud with Hulk, and I saw him sitting down with Hulk one night, and I'll never forget that, like Hulk told him, he says, "Oh, so, okay, I'm gonna do my leg drop at the end and this," and then Randy said, "Okay, well, I'd like to go up and do one of my
Elbow, yeah.
dropping elbow on the top rope," and then Hulk would say, "Okay, so I'd like for when I come into the ring," and then Randy say, "Yeah, well, I want to do something where I run with your hair and I jump over the top rope, I guillotine you, and you take the bump and land on my feet, come back in," and they were saying what they wanted to do to each other. And I went down and I sat down with Randy. I wasn't. I think it was in London. It was overseas anyway. It was in Europe, and I was in the dressing room with him, and I sat down with Randy. And I know Randy wasn't too pleased, or he was very confident in working with me, like what an easy win this is going to be, and this and that, and so I sat down with him, and he says, "Well, so he starts, well, he says, Randy, I said, stop, stop." And he was so insulted, and he looked at me. I said, "Randy," I said, "before we go any further, I definitely want you to beat me with that big elbow off the top rope." I said, "I want to take that elbow. I want to
Mm.
take it." I said, "That's amazing." He says, "Well," he says, "I plan on doing that. That's good." He says, "Good." And I said, he said, and then I said, "Randy, hold on." I said, "There's another thing I want you to do absolutely to me." I said, "I want you to grab me by the hair." And I said, "I want you to start running, and I want you to do that thing where you jump over the top and you guillotine me, and I'll take a bump. You're not gonna believe it, and I'm gonna choke myself to death." I said, "You're gonna have plenty of time to get the reaction." He said, "Okay, good, good." And I said, "Randy," I said, "you know that move you do off the hip toss when you reverse it and you do that special move that you do?" I said, "I'd like to take that too." I said, "That's one thing I wanted to take from
Mm.
you. It's a hell of a bump that I could take." So after about 2 minutes of me doing stuff like that and telling him stuff like that, he stopped. And he says, "Well, what are you gonna do?" I says, "Well," I said, "whatever." I said, "I could." He says, "Well, what do you want to do?"
Uh,
So, and you understand? And then I started telling him a couple of things I wanted to do. And they end up having a match where I look like $1 million,
yeah,
and then he looked like $1 million.
right.
But I came in with the philosophy of giving him everything.
Yeah,
And when you give a guy enough in a match, he's going to start feeling bad, and he's going to start
sure.
giving it back to
Got to
you.
give it back.
And
Yeah.
that was my philosophy. And what a great match we had that night, and what a great so I always had that kind of philosophy when I worked in with guys, even in the tag team. So what do you want to do? What do
Yeah.
you want to do? And they tell me. So they would get in a confident mood. They would get in. They would feel better about knowing that they're going to put all their moves in, and it always come up the same question: well, what do you want to do?
Yeah. Yeah,
And
it's the
then that
psychology of it. Yeah, it's amazing. When you did, and of course the great success the Rougeau brothers had, and then Ray, I don't know if it was as much the injuries that he had, but also he just wanted to do something else. So when you guys when you split the tag team, you still had a lot left in the tank. And Jacques, we've seen people that get gimmicks, and it may sound like a great idea, but it doesn't matter. You have to be able to sell it. And the idea of the Mountie, sure, great idea, but somebody could have squandered that. Why, and how did you make it work so well?
first when Vince came up with that idea, I
Uh,
was like, a Mountie? Hell, I don't
uh,
know nothing about
uh,
Mounties, and then
oh,
but then I enjoyed the fact that he had trust in me enough to put me in that position. I said, well, I said, okay, but you know what? You got to give credit where credit is due. Vince, his strongest part of Vince was to give gimmicks to the people who in real life looked the real like them. Like in
yeah,
other words, I was some kind of a jerk, and I was obnoxious, and I was arrogant, I was loud, And I was so when he gave me that character, I just put the shoes on and it fit me really good. You know, and it was like
Oh
so
man, you were
so
great.
so that was that's what made it the success. I also think and I discovered as with the Fabulous Rougeau brothers that hey, I'm a great heel. Like I love being babyface all my life, but the last 2 years being heel with Raymond, and going back to me and Raymond, I want to tell you something for the real wrestling fans that I just want to share this with them. Why the Rougeau brothers were so great, the Fabulous Rougeau brothers, to the agent's mind and to the owners of the business was, and probably the fans. It was now they realize it. It was like we were Raymond and I. We were known to be specialists on getting heat behind the referee's back. Like a lot of that was something that we had did so
Yeah.
well. Like everything, all the cheating we did, all the hypocrite things we did was we never had a match where the people were screaming at the referee, "You dumb son of a, you stupid!" It was never that. It was always hate for us
Hey,
because they
yeah,
never hated the referees because they saw the referees were doing their best, but we were so fast behind their back that they couldn't catch us,
yeah,
and so the
yeah,
heat was getting on us instead of getting on the referee, and
yeah.
which we were specialized, Raymond and I, and I did the same thing with Jimmy Hart when Jimmy Hart was my
Oh
manager because
God.
when Vince asked me to be the Mountie, I told him I said two conditions, like with Raymond, I said two conditions. I always come in with conditions.
Yeah, yeah,
I said the first one, I said I want to have Jimmy Hart as my manager. That was my first condition.
yeah,
Greatest manager of all times. We'll
yeah,
get into that in a second.
yeah,
Greatest manager of all times. And I said the second one, I want to bring a shock stick. I want to I
ooh,
want, I
yeah,
want to bring my shock stick, and that was an idea I had that Eddie Creechman did with Abdullah the Butcher when I was 8, 9 years old, and he
yeah.
scared the living death out of me in the dressing room, and he scared me so much that I said if he scared me like that, I'm going to scare the fans like that too, and I'm going
Oh,
to
you
scare
did.
everybody. So he agreed, and then
Huh.
from then on, Vince had so many great ideas, and so the character came well. But to come back to Jimmy Hart, let me tell you something. There's been a lot of managers in life, and of course, uh, people are going to say, "Well, Jacques, you're going to preach for your own." Of course, how do you say that expression? You preach for your own. Anyway, so Jimmy, since he was my manager, sure, I'm
Yeah,
going to preach for him. But let me tell
yeah.
you why he is the greatest manager of all time. I'm going to give you these reasons, and maybe I know you know, but maybe I'll give you one reason that you didn't know. There's a list of things I got to tell you.
Mm,
First of all, Jimmy Hart, if he had a 12 o'clock interview in a radio station or anywhere else, he was there at 11:30.
yeah,
He was always there 30 minutes before
yeah,
every time. I
yeah,
never got in front of him. I never got to an interview or something before Jimmy. He was always there on time first. He would never go out in bars. He would never take drugs or alcohol.
yeah,
He would always go out there and he would buy clothes that would match the talent's costume.
yep.
He would
Had the
buy
jackets
coats.
made.
He
Yeah.
would make the jackets made for his talent. But the best reason of all, I have never, in my whole time that I had Jimmy for 4 years, two as the Fabulous Rougeau brothers and two as the Mount, I never once saw Jimmy come out on an interview and said, "Hey, let me tell you something. I thought of something here. I thought." Never me. Never
Yeah,
me. The
yeah,
minute he took the mic, it was, "Oh, let me tell you something about my men. Let me tell you something about the Rougeau brothers. Let me tell you something about the Hart Foundation. Let me tell you about," contrary to others who come in and says, "Hey, I got a brain here and I'm doing this and I'm,"
mm,
he never put himself in front of his talent. He always put his talent over from the minute he got on the promo, and we were not smart enough to return the favor. He was so
mm,
generous of his
yeah,
time. He was so good, and that's what made him a different kind of manager. And that's why when I came in as the Mountie, I loved him so much as a fact. I loved the respect he had and the politeness and the professionalism and everything. He was a total
oh,
package
yeah,
as far as a manager.
yeah. And loved, absolutely love being around him. That makes it much easier, especially like you said, when you're on doing all these dates, you got to be around these people a lot. And if you don't get along, it's not. One thing we should mention also about Jimmy is what an incredible talent he is. Not just as a manager, a lot of people don't realize that he wrote a lot of the theme music for people.
We
And
don't
I'm
like
gonna
heavy metal. We don't like rock and roll. All we like to listen to is Barry Manilow. Hey, we're all
all
American.
American boys,
And then I'm
all
the
American
Mountie. I'm
boys.
handsome. I'm brave. I'm strong. I'm the Mounty, and I enforce the law. You could try to run, but you could never hide, 'cause the Mountie always gets his man. And he wrote all those songs, and
Yeah.
it's amazing
Oh,
how
I was
much
just, I tell you, I was
people.
looking up, I had to look up because you beat me to it, but I looked up the lyrics with the, all American boys, but that line of, we don't like heavy metal, we don't like rock and roll, all we like to listen to is Barry Manilow. I mean, just the, oh my God,
On
just
peut
the,
pas, how about this one? On peut pas les sentir.
yeah.
On aime les faire fâcher quand we love the USA. In French, that lyrics, that was so good because the French lyrics were saying, we hate the Americans, we can't stand them. And we were saying that in French, and then we finished like, we're all American boys.
Oh,
And
that
and
run was
people didn't
just,
know.
oh
People
my
didn't know
God.
we were killing them in French. We were
Yeah.
absolutely killing them. And then
No.
it was amazing, the
Yeah.
psychology behind that song.
Yeah.
Jimmy, oh, amazing, amazing. Jimmy
Yeah.
Hart, amazing.
Don't call us pretty boy. We're not a muscle head. We hate that long-haired look. We
I
like the
like that.
preppy look instead. And the Mountie was great too. I'm the Mountie.
Oh, that was awesome.
Uh, no question about that. But really, you got to give him credit that you guys weren't supposed to be heels. I mean, you'd been baby faces, but who knew that you guys were? I mean, as heels. My God, how the heat you guys would generate. Like you said, the idea that you could get away, and that's an art to be able to do that deception and not make the ref look like an idiot. Because how could you miss this? You guys did it in a way that. Yeah, he missed it because the jackasses back there, they're doing that, and he didn't even get a chance. He turns around and you're like, the
Oh,
All-American ball. And
oh yeah, everything was
the
legal.
little flags were brilliant too.
And
Remember the
wishing everybody a great Memorial Day when it was Thanksgiving Day.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you
We'll
mess
just
up the dates.
mess up the dates and say, "Oh, we love America, we love the
Yeah.
United States," and then,
You
but it was a great gimmick. It was
it
fun. It was
was.
a
And the Mountie too, and that run you had with Ray, with
big boss man,
Big
big
Boss
boss man.
Man, that really when I still love to bring up when that clip of when you went to jail, and I know that that stuff was just off the top of your head when you're begging and breaking down, and oh man,
You know
one of the
what, Sean?
best.
I'll tell you, Sean.
Yeah,
I was at WrestlingCon, and I want to tell you this. I was at WrestleCon this weekend, and
yeah.
you're repeating everything that's so funny because they had me sing my two songs on the stage. I sang my two songs, and people went nuts. And then now they already booked me in May again for WrestleCon, something in May anyway.
Uh,
It's a big one in May, and they already asked me if I don't mind singing my song again. They just love it when
yeah,
I sing the song, and then so it's a, and then people come up to me and then for autographs and pictures, and one of the first things they do is they ask me, did was those segments filmed before you went to jail, or what did it happen in between matches when they went to see, people talk to me about that jailhouse match like it was yesterday. I
uh,
mean, like it was yesterday. And that match there, that's a Hall of Fame match right there.
yeah. Well, and people don't, need to appreciate too. You talk about guys that were tremendous workers. Ray Traylor was, I mean, as a boss man, and he was a big dude too. And what he could do in the ring, like I tell people, he could do the splits. I mean, that guy was so flexible, and hurling around. He's close to 300 plus,
and
right?
and the, and the slide outs of the ring when he'd go
Yeah,
punch the guy, when he'd go punch me, he'd shoot me, and I'd hold the ropes or something, I'd slide out, and I'd be like, I'm the smart. I'd turn around, and he did a
boom.
baseball slide through the ropes, and boom, he'd
Yeah,
catch me right there. People had popped so much, and you know what made Ray so special? I'll tell you what made Ray so special. Ray was brought up in the breed where when I gave lessons at my wrestling school for 20 years, the first thing I told, protect the guy's giving you his body. So if you
yes,
have a guy up in the air and for a slam or whatever, and you lose your balance, well, you make sure that he lands flat and you land crooked because he trusted you with his body. So you may, and Ray Traylor, he would pick me up every which way but possible, and I'd always end up landing flat, never hurt me. and
Yeah.
everybody was so impressed. And he took care of his opponent, and that's what we did in the era that we were in, is like make sure that your opponent's safe first and your safety comes second,
Yeah.
because he
So he
gives you
can
his back.
work again tomorrow. Yeah. And that's something that's lost too, that and you call it working like butter. It's like butter, smooth. And there's a whole other, the whole side of this, like when they kind of broke off with the ECW and like the stuff that they would do, it was like, just they wanted paint, they just wanted but there really is the art of making it so smooth and no one can tell the difference. And you talk about someone like Ray, and I remember what used to blow me away with what he could do with that nightstick, where he would swing full force and probably centimeters that wouldn't connect to the body, or he'd lay one in on the back of someone's head or their back, and you'd be like, oh my God, how did that guy's head not split wide open? Because he was so unbelievably good with weight and the
He was.
punches. That shows it. Like that is the skill. That is unbelievable.
I made an episode that's coming out this spring. I can't wait. Last
Mm,
fall, of Dark Side of the Ring, and it's about Ray Trailer. And
mm.
when they called me to do a part, they flew me into Toronto to do that. I said, at the beginning, I was a little hesitant
Yeah, there's a
because
dark
Dark Side
side.
of the
Yeah,
Ring is like Dark Side of people. And I was
yeah,
saying there is no dark side. And
yeah. To
so when
Ray.
I told the guy I've already done a couple of dark sides. So I told the guy, I said, listen, I said, I'm not the kind of guy who likes to go talk negative about a person, but I said, I don't know what you're going to do with Ray that's so
Yeah,
negative. And then he explained to me in the later part of his career, alcohol came part of his life, and finally had a little rough part there, but finally mended with that and fixed that. But he says, I want to bring in Jacques because he says, we want to bring in some positive now in Dark Side of the Ring. And I went in there and man,
yeah.
I did a hell of a job. You'll
Mm.
see when I
Sold
talk
him.
about the Ray trailer, it's going to be so amazing.
Yeah.
You know.
You told the truth, like you always do.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Jacques, man, this has just been a great conversation. And we are going to be seeing each other, folks, coming up for Legends Mania that's taking place in Gatineau, Quebec on May 30th. And I'm going to be coming in. I'm so excited to be a part of it. Tell me about this event, how it all came together, and who we can expect to see there.
It's going to be anybody that's in the northeast of the United States and Montreal, I mean Quebec and Ontario. You need to come to this event. This is going to
Mm.
be a spectacular event, and for different reasons. There's going to be the legends in the afternoon. There's going to be the show that night, and the match where me and Harry Smith are going to be meeting.
Yeah.
Hopefully as friends. But anyway, we're going to be meeting together, and I'll try to talk to him until then. But anyway, but there's also so many other great matches. There's
Yeah.
matches like the big giant Picton who's going against the giant Orion. It's a match of giants, but Giant Orion won Wrestling Academy, my big competition through Canada in the last 3 years. He won it. And then in another match that I know as of now, Jeremy Prophet. Jeremy Prophet, he's one of the best indies in Canada.
Oh,
He's in Mexico right now. He's going up against Jesse V from Toronto, Vince Farrago. What a great talent. But those two guys, Jeremy Prophet and Jesse V, they're both winners of different years in Wrestling Academy in Montreal. They came.
oh.
So now they're going to be going one against each other to see who's the best of the winners of Wrestling Academy. That's going to be absolutely amazing. And then we're going to have different talent from
Yeah.
Calgary, from Alberta, from all over the places coming to that show. It's
And
just going to be
how about some of our superstars that we spent some time with? Who are we gonna
Oh man, it's gonna be
come
nice
in?
to see Lex Luger again, Coco Beware, Hacksaw Jim Duggan,
Uh,
Jake the Snake, Jerry Lawler, Greg Demmer, Valentine, Sean Mooney. How can we forget Sean? Jacqueline. Jacqueline is awesome, and then we have Sarah Page and the Headbangers are going to be there. There's going to be there's so much more. I don't have the
uh,
list in front of me, and
uh,
there's going to be more added until then. Because it's funny as you say that, Sean. I'm getting I'm getting some emails and some messages from different people now. They're saying, "Hey, Jacques, how can I get on the show?
yeah,
Can you
gonna be
book
a
me?"
part of it. Yeah.
Because now people are starting to see this is going to be a big extravaganza in Canada, the biggest show in Canada, hopefully in 2026. So if you're anywhere in the Northeast or Central Canada and you want to make a road trip, just have some fun that day. Get yourself a hotel the night before. Come to Legends Mania and meet the legends in the day, and come to the wrestling show that night to see me win the Royal Rumble. because
Yeah.
I'm going to win that. I'm going to win that Royal Rumble, Sean. You
Well,
can bet your
Harry's
bottom
gonna
dollar on it.
once have to say something about that.
That's okay. I always have a little something there. Don't worry. And plus,
Yeah.
I'm part owner, so I'm going to win.
How do people get tickets and get more information?
Legendsmania.com. Legendsmania.com. They could go on my
Yeah.
website too, JacquesRougeau.com. You have the link there. You could also go directly in the Slush Puppy Center, which is Centre Slush Puppy .ca. You could get tickets there, but as soon as you go into I think my website will be the easiest. JacquesRougeau.com. You'll see a yellow thing there and click on that. You'll have all the prices and everything. There's not only the seats you could get, there's the Legends Mania, the package deals. You could get a lodge. I don't know how to say that in English. A lodge. It's like, on top of the building they have like the hockey, and the hockey have
Yeah, like
people
the skybox. Yeah,
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 skybox.
yeah, yeah.
You have those that you could rent out for 10, 12 people if you want to come in
Oh,
a group and
cool.
have some
Huh?
fun. Yeah, so there's about 30 of them. So it's going to be on. We already about like 15 sold out of 30. So, and
Yeah.
we're like 5 months out. So it's going to be awesome. Can't wait to see this event. Can't wait to be part of this event. But mostly, to be honest with you, if there's two things that I'm really anxious, or three things. First thing is to get out of that Royal Rumble alive. And then second of all is to see you, Sean Mooney. It's always such
Brother.
a pleasure. And the third thing is I can't wait for this to be done.
Yeah, yeah, it's a lot of work. People don't realize.
I've been working on it for 5 months already.
Yeah, and I know Ray doesn't do a whole lot of stuff, so it's an opportunity to see you guys together again.
Yeah, Raymond will
Maybe
be there.
not in
How
the
can I
ring,
forget
but
the
yeah,
fabulous Rougeau brothers are going to be
yeah,
there too? How can I
yeah.
forget that?
Yeah. And I have a special spot in my heart for Raymond. He was and you too. And that's one of the reasons why I've always been so fond of you guys, because when I came in and I was this outsider, I'd never really been involved in professional wrestling, and it's a tough business, man. You gotta earn your way in. People are speaking
Yep.
carny around you when you walk into a room, and you're
Yeah.
just the ribs and stuff. And you guys were awesome to me. You helped me out so much so that I could get my feet under me. And I never forgot it, Jacques. I never did. You
We saw
guys were
your
always so
talent.
good to me.
We saw
Yeah.
your talent, Sean,
Yeah.
but most of all, let's be honest with you, put all the talent aside because you're great at what you do. It's the kindness and the
Yeah.
respect you had when you spoke to us, and that goes a far way with the Rougeau
Yeah.
brothers. When you respect us, it's going to come back to you in thousand more times, and that's why I'm so happy when I see you. I was happy when you asked me to do this podcast. It wasn't a job for me. It was like, oh
Yeah.
my God, I
It's
can't wait to
fun.
spend this time with Sean.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jacques. And we're going to be in touch. We're going to be seeing each other soon. But thanks so much, because there's so much that people don't realize, what went on in your career. And really, thanks for
There's
providing such cool insight.
there's two last things that I want to bring up before we go. It's going to take a second.
Yeah. Great. We got lots of time.
Last week we were inducted in the Hall of Fame of Europe, Benville Hall of Fame, and what a great moment that
Yeah.
was. And I asked him. I said, why did you do that, Ben? He said, I didn't do nothing. He says, it's letters from the fans that we got in Europe,
Hmm.
all over Europe, that wanted us to be in the Hall of Fame. One of them, and then he says, well, one of them really insisted on you, Jacques, to be in there because you're the only Canadian to ever beat Hulk Hogan.
Yeah.
So,
Right. Yeah. That's right. That's a
so he
big
says, you
point.
need to be
Yeah.
in the Hall of Fame.
The Hulkster. Well,
But
you
what
guys are,
really, I love it.
it is a great honor with the WWE as well, that, what does that all mean to you when you do get recognition like that?
It means the world because
Yeah.
it's labor that we've done, and
Yeah.
and like you said, if we're going to be honest with each other, I think the great workers, the good workers, they don't need to be told they're great. We
Right.
know it. We know it because we were put on top of the world to represent the world in the biggest company in the world. So we know we're good workers. But when the fans tell you, it's not like looking at yourself in the mirror and say, "Hey, I'm a
Yeah.
good worker."
Right. Right.
When the fans tell you, it's like, "Wow, that's appreciation." So that's
Right.
all that. And I have so many people come up to me and say, "Jacques, I realized today, but man, I used to hate you so much. But that now I realize because you did your job well, like and all those compliments they come in, And when I do Comic Cons, that I think is the greatest part. I go in for a signing for 4 hours at a Comic Con, and in this and you go in this new country, in this new city, and you sit down, and all the fans come up to you, and in the time of 4 hours, you have pictures, magazines, uh, clothing,
Yeah.
memories. They're all brought to you in 4 hours, the best times of your life. I walk out of a Comic Con and my ego is big
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
because I lived my 50 years of career, I lived in 4 hours. And people
Yeah.
that come to see you, it's because they like you. So people like you, they bring in some good stuff,
Uh-huh.
so you get all the good stuff for 4 hours. So that's so the being in the Hall of Fame in Europe is just and like
Yeah.
Raymond said, if you go check Ben Veal out, check the Hall of Fame. We did an interview with him just this week, and Raymond explained, like I said, he's a smart one, but he explains it so well that the recognition is like it means it's like it's a weight off our shoulder now. It's
No.
like if the whole Europe says that we should be in the Hall of Fame, then I think we know now that we should be. If it wasn't political, that we should be in the Hall of
Yeah. And what's cool about it too, Jacques, is that it's global. Like I remember seeing the line over in Manchester for people to see you, and I said it has never changed. These people have never forgotten, and that is the ultimate compliment that they line up, that they want to see you and they want to
Fame. That
meet
is.
you. Yeah, and it
It's
tells
funny
you.
that you say that, Sean. It's
Yeah,
funny when you say that because when I go in Comic Cons,
yeah,
I'm an insecure person. I always look at the booths that are around me, to see like
yeah, you're
I
right.
hope I do at least as good as them. But you
Right.
know what makes my booth special? I'll tell you what. Even this weekend, I had so much fun. I had people come up to me, and I'm dressed as a Mountie. I got my boots,
Yeah,
I got my
yeah,
glasses, I got my hat, I got
yeah.
everything. I look like the Mountie, and you don't see I don't have any hair because I got my hat, so I look like the Mountie. And it's so much fun because when the person comes up to me for a picture, the first thing I asked them, I said, "You want a funny picture or you want a straight picture?" And they look at me like, "What do you mean funny picture?" I said, "Well, okay, here we go." I said, so I take off their hat if they have a hat. So I said, "I'm going to pull you by the hair, your hair back." I said, "I'm going to put my stick right in front of your face. I want you to put your two hands like this.
No,
And I
yeah,
want you
yeah.
to look at my stick and go like you're afraid." So then he goes like this. And no, 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 like you're afraid. So then he goes, and I go like this. And then we take the picture. And the guy turns around and says, "Thank you." I said, "No, no, no, wait here, come here, come here, come here." I said, "Let me see the picture you took." So I said, and
Yeah,
so he shows me the picture, and then I said, "Make
yeah,
it bigger. Look at our facial expressions." And it comes out really
yeah.
good.
That's
And then the
awesome.
fan leaves. So what happened in that spur moment that we spent together, he had become a wrestler for like
Yeah,
30 seconds. He had become one of my victims for 30
yeah,
seconds. Things that he's seen that he lived when he was young. And I do that to every person that comes in line. And the funniest thing is I get so much people that come to me after that are in other lines. They
yeah.
just turn around because of my suit. They recognize me from so far. And then they see me do this funny picture. So now about an hour after I've been there, I asked the person, I said, "You want a funny, oh, funny picture, funny
Yeah,
picture,
yeah,
funny
please,
picture."
like you did with
Because
him. Yeah,
they saw it from the other line. Like, they
yeah. The
relived
other
it.
guys are just sign here, here, here. Yeah, yeah,
Not
right.
taking it away, but I'm just saying that I really get into
Yeah,
my
that's
character when I
awesome.
do that, and it's fun.
Jacques Rougeau still selling and giving back to the fans. All right, Jacques, thank you so much, man. I loved it. We'll talk soon.
Thank you, Sean. See you in May.